Hello everybody and welcome to episode 3 of the Daily Landscape Photography Critique sponsored by K's Filters, and today we're going to be discussing 3 images submitted by Andreas Sveass. So let's get started. So Andreas has submitted 3 very accomplished images here, and he's obviously a great hiker too. Some of these peaks are not easy to get up. I haven't been up these specific ones, but I've certainly been up in this area. So since he is an accomplished photographer, I'm going to dig my heels in a little bit where I can. But we're going to start with this image, which I think is absolutely fantastic in every sense of the word. This is the kind of image that I try to capture myself increasingly, actually. And I say that because it's so complex, but in a really enjoyable way. This scattered foreground, it's a really ambitious thing to take on. And you will see many photographers leaving out this kind of complexity, trying to drill down the image to its bare essentials. But it means that you lose these images often in the desire to simplify too much. And I think Andreas has done exactly the right thing in embracing this complexity, this scattered foreground of boulders, which feels beautifully balanced. And knowing Lofoten as I do, which is moderately well, I know that many of the summits are like this. So with these scattered granite boulders, you're not going to find these beautiful rounded sandstone foregrounds that we can find in the Northwest Highlands, for example. And so you do have to make use of what is at your feet. And I think this is as good as you're going to manage at this kind of location. And the whole scene is really nicely balanced too. I particularly like this middle ridge, which just gives that bit more depth and that bit more interest thanks to this high mountain lake here, and the ridge actually serves to obscure some of the settlements which are just creeping through on the left hand side there as well, so it does actually create a perhaps wilder impression than you get from standing on this ridge, and I know that because I have been there myself. So a really great one to start off with. I'll show you the raw file since we have it, and you can see it's a very, very straight edit. And my only pointer really would be to just slightly open up the shadows, those deep blacks. It just feels a little bit too harsh there. But the change that I would make is so small, I'm not even going to bother showing you because it really is a wonderful photo. So onto a winter scene now, and this is beautifully composed, these exquisite flowing lines of sastrugi, an obvious leading line here, really dynamic diagonal lines too. The right choice in my opinion to have this dominant foreground, so more than 2/3 of the frame is filled with this gorgeous snow texture, and the lighting is pretty ideal too. I'm guessing that this is after sunset. So really lovely in terms of the composition and the lighting. And again, I don't have too many pointers here other than to say that the edit is perhaps just a little bit too harsh. And I say that because I think the blues have just become slightly electric, and a little bit less in the way of the edit is going to create a softer and more natural scene, I think. So here is the original raw file. And here's how I would personally edit it. And maybe I'd add a bit more saturation here and there. You can see I've desaturated in this case, but there's certainly a case for adding a bit more color and contrast to the background. So if we want to do that, we can just, let's use a linear gradient here and drag it over the top roughly where that haze is, and just add a bit of contrast and see how that looks. So, I'm not saying don't add some contrast to this scene, and perhaps we can hold back that top right color and just put a little bit, top right corner, and just put a little bit of a magenta wash over the top and a bit more contrast there still, just to bring out some of those lovely colors. But to me, that slightly more subtle edit does work a little bit better. It's a little bit more delicate to complement that delicate snow. So I will just compare the two for you there. And really the difference between the two is going to be a matter of taste for most people. Certainly Andreas's edit is more impactful, not least because he has all the focus stacked frames to work on here. So he has shot this as a focus stack, but I don't have all those images to work with. But anyway, an absolutely gorgeous image, but just to show you 2 different directions there to take the edit. And then finally onto this image. Now, I think if Andreas does have access to these kinds of mountains, I don't know if he's a local or if he's just come here on a couple of trips, but if he has the ability to get out into these mountains in the winter, as I have in Scotland from time to time, then I start to be really quite strict with myself when it comes to finding these snowy foregrounds, because actually when the snow conditions are like this, you can find foregrounds absolutely everywhere. And so I try to be as picky as possible to really choose foregrounds that scream at me winter, or have these beautiful flowing lines as that previous composition did. And to my mind, this foreground doesn't work quite as well. It's perfectly nice, and because it's snow, it's just wonderful. I understand that, but you can be really, really selective in these places. And if there weren't a more interesting foreground than this, then I would possibly just take this in a slightly different creative direction. So one thing I would do is probably crop out this peak on the right, because to me that just creates a little area to catch the eye. So I want to crop in there. So let's have a quick look at the original raw file here. Again, we can see a very, very straight edit. And incidentally, I did change the white balance here to be more neutral, because the camera auto white balance really messed it up. But this is my edit, so I'm just going to quickly go through this here. You can see that my crop is quite significant. I've focused in on the image, so this maybe is that simplification that I was referring to, and the foreground really serves as just an extra layer as opposed to a feature, a subject in the image. Of course, I would try to recompose this a little bit. I'm not sure exactly how to follow along with this line of thinking with the composition, but to me this becomes more about layers as opposed to saying here's a foreground and here's a background, which I get more from Andreas's edit. So again, this is very much personal taste, but if we just compare the two, on the right we have Andreas's edit, and because he's brought a bit more contrast into the foreground as well, it does draw the eye more, which if you're wanting to focus the viewer's attention on the foreground as well, is a great thing to do. But in my view, it's better to just let that foreground disappear a little bit and act as a layer, so that all our attention is drawn to this high mountain capturing what I assume is the last light there, the sort of Alpen glow with this amazing belt of Venus in the background. And incidentally, Andreas's edit is probably slightly preferable from a color perspective. I've not really tried to do my best there, but yeah, I mean, 3 absolutely gorgeous images, which means that I can nitpick as much as I like. But thank you very much for submitting those, Andreas, and I'll see you all in the next one.